And what we all thought would be an exciting second half turned out to be a pretty comprehensive win for India over England. Welcome to the shiny side. We're looking back at India's, I guess you can say, massive win over England. And with us today, we have once again Vivek Ramabhadran, who's been on the show before, founder of All Earth. And what we haven't spoken about also, by the way, that he's a fantastic singer. But that's for another time. How are you doing, Vivek?
I'm very good. Thanks, Faris. Always a pleasure being here.
Good stuff. So why don't we kick things off with, why don't you do the 33-second summary of today's game?
Okay, sure. So England won the toss, put India in, and brought probably the most intense and best form to the tournament. There were, while the wicket was definitely two-pace, their bowlers made super use of the conditions, especially Vokes. And they, I think, kept a very tight leash through the game. All the bowlers were very much controlling the pace of the game and did very well to restrict India to the 220 that they did. In India, of course, I think nobody really got going. No major partnership happened, let's put it that way. Rohit Sharma, I think, played one of his great innings, actually, because he played in the hardest part of the conditions as well. And a great rearguard effort from Surya as well, ensured that India had at least something to bowl at. Yes, at the halfway mark, 230 would have looked very achievable for them. But England started off positively, but then lost 4 wickets in succession. I think the sustained aggression and intensity of Shami and Bumrah mainly, and then followed up by the spinners, and they just caved in after that. And in the end, a very, very comprehensive, comfortable victory by 100 runs.
Good stuff. 58 seconds. So just 25 seconds over, but pretty comprehensive. You gave us everything we wanted. But look, I think we have to start with how special was Rohit's knock, right? Because he was by far the best batsman on either side. And we've seen that with him even in test matches, sometimes where we're playing on a minefield and he somehow finds, I mean, he gets somehow, I guess he gets, I won't say bad rep, but, sometimes people think this because of how natural he looks, people assume that he's not somebody who may be able to bat in stifling conditions, but he made run scoring look so much easier compared to anybody else today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think he's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely right. I remember a couple of his test innings. There was one, especially with, I think, cemented his place as an opener in the test team. I think it was a double century against England only in one of the,
maybe in Chennai
Ahmedabad or Bombay, a fairly big turning track, and nobody else got anywhere close. Maybe it was Chennai. Nobody else got anywhere close. I don't think there was any other 50 also in that match. And no, so he was fantastic. I think he's really embraced the captaincy so well. I think that's showing the side is so cohesive, at least it looks like. He also adapted, right? He started slow. You could see he didn't go from the first over today. The wicket was clearly difficult to bat on. He was taking his time. Then he started pressing the button, but because he was losing wickets at the other end and he played the long game. And I thought maybe he need not have played that shot that time. I mean, I'm guessing he thought that they probably thought that they wanted to get to 250, 280 at least. And that's what they were going for. But fantastic. I mean, super effort.
I mean, he got 87 of 101, which in the circumstances obviously is a great knock. But also, I think like you mentioned, right? Like the Rohit 2.0 is the guy who takes the game on and he shows the team that this is how I want everyone to play. But today he also showed the side that, you know what, when you need to buckle down, I can do that. By the way, he batted, this is the longest he's batted in an ODI game since Jan 2020, since before we knew what COVID was essentially. So he's really played it very differently today.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I think the way he used his feet to the spinners, you could see that he was the best on both sides on that. Was great to watch.
Going back to the toss, by the way. So England opted to bowl, which I think till about 5 hours into the second innings, we all thought was a great decision. What did you make of that in hindsight?
It was the right decision because the wicket was tricky. England's batsmen are not firing this tournament. So, and on a tricky pitch like this, I mean, there was obviously high likelihood that, they could get bundled out for a low score. So they felt that, listen, let's, if we can get India down, and then, it's easier for England to chase a 200 kind of total than bat first where you don't know how the wicket's going to play out. I think they did absolutely right. It's just that, the batsmen should have stood up for more.
And this will sound like a ridiculous question now, but were you surprised not to see Ashwin for Shami at that time at the toss?
No, I wasn't surprised because, how can you drop Shami now, right? And and again, today with the performance that he pulled through, I think they're fine with these two spinners because Jadeja, has been, is super consistent and, in delivering his 10 overs.
Yeah.
Kuldeep, given that he was making a comeback in the team, if he was, on and off, etc., I think that's where Ashwin would have got a chance, where if there are more right-handers, let's put Ashwin in and all. But I think Kuldeep's also, he bowled phenomenally well today as well. I think I feel sad for Ashwin, because this is probably going to be his last tournament and he'll retire, I suppose, because he's in the twilight of his career. So yeah, that's probably.
Who knows? There's still some games to go. Weird things happen. But going back to India's batting, so I think 5 of the top 8 didn't get into double figures, but clearly Rohit, Rahul, and Sky, who was also quite good in the low order, I think he did just enough. And I think clearly in the end, that was a big difference, right? Because that became the difference between chasing 190 versus 230 is not.
Yeah, we were 183 for 7. So, and then that extra gap was mostly him. So it was.
I think it'll probably be. I mean, it'd be a miss not to talk about how good England were with the ball today. By the way, from the early on, I know there was a bit of movement, but like Vokes has been all over the place. I think he got his length perfect in that ball that got Shubman Gill would have got a lot of guys out early on.
Yeah. No, I think they were fantastic with the ball. I mean, imagine like the pressure on them, right? I mean, against Rohit and Shubman Gill in great form. You have 40,000 people in the crowd waiting for those moments. And I think they did really, really well. Obviously, they got some assistance, but they did well. And I think especially when it was Rohit took his time, and then in Vokes' second over, he took him for 16 or 18 or so. Then again, things eased out after that, right? You felt that, okay, now they'll take off, but that didn't happen because then they kept on getting wickets, and they really did very well with the ball. I think they were super tight. They were like, amazing on the field. If you remember that Virat Kohli, how they staged him out, that was all pressure that they created. That was fantastic.
And there was no extra till the 41st over or something, so they were really tight. I think in the field, captaincy, fielding, everything was.
They were flawless.
Flawless. That's their best. I would say their best 45 overs of the tournament so far, without a doubt.
Yeah, by far. I think there was one drop catch at the end, but didn't matter anyway. But they were amazing.
Yeah, and I guess before we move on India's batting, what's your take on Iyer's spot? So would you say it's a question mark for India right now? Because that's probably a one thing. I don't know if he's done enough to lock his spot down.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly, if you ask me prior to this tournament, I was even surprised that he was there. I would still prefer Ishan Kishan actually at that number 4 or 5 and also get that extra left-hander in. But they obviously feel to have more confidence in Shreyas Iyer, and he did come through in a couple of matches, actually pretty critical matches as well. So I don't think they're going to drop him just for this. Though it is disappointing. I think the way, if you were to now, of course, look at India's areas for improvement, it also was the batting, right? I mean, they were comfortable, but then they just had this urge to accelerate and, they couldn't. And that's where Rahul and Shreyas Iyer, it was all very, quite awful shots, actually, when they got out. So there's something to think about for sure.
Because I guess there's 3 games to go, right? So you don't want to make a change for the semi-final. If you want to make a change, if you want to bring anyone in, you want to give them a couple of games at least before then. So I guess that's probably something which is.
My guess is I think they will now keep this stable. And of course, the tricky question is when Hardik Pandya comes back after injury, then what do they do? I think that is the real, that's the hard question. I have a view, but that's what they'll probably be thinking about.
Interesting. And so I guess we have to ask this question now. What is 2 weeks ago, India's pecking order for the fast bowlers was Bumrah, Siraj, Shami. What is the pecking order today?
No, I was coming to that, right? So I think Siraj is definitely number 3 now. You could see a few lapses in the field as well. Definitely, he's not as sharp as the average other fielder is in India. So I think he would be under pressure. So if Hardik comes back, they will take him. I think he's a big match player as well. So they will take him. Then the question is who has to go out. And again, Kuldeep's great, Jadeja's great. You need those 20 overs are proving very important. Bumrah and Shami are amazing. So yeah, I think Siraj would be the one who would probably have to sit out once Hardik comes back. It'll strengthen the batting and give and keep the bowling going.
I guess that what's been working in Siraj's favor is, and his record speaks for that. I think generally speaking, Bumrah doesn't bowl too much in the power play, and he also does not get that many wickets as he does later. But I think Siraj has been really important for India in the last year or so to get those power play wickets. And Shami, again, I guess today he did take one, but they were already 2 down at that point. So I guess the question there only question would be, is Shami the guy you want to be bowling in the first 6 overs or not? Or is that still Siraj? I guess that's the only tricky question over there, right?
Us, right? Like Siraj, if you see, India has won all the matches so far, but I think in every match, Siraj's first spell in the power play has been wavered. In fact, if you see, it's the part where the other team has got a chance, where Bumrah is locking it down at the other end. You know, now tomorrow when you're playing a team which is high on its confidence, like a rejuvenated Australia now, or South Africa is batting first and they're going all out, you know, these things will matter immensely.
Yeah. True.
Right. So I think this is Siraj is a little bit weak right now. But again, you know, he had a good Asia Cup. He has good record. I mean, he's obviously talented. It's a hard choice, but they'll have to, I guess, make it this way, because I don't see them. I think it will be weird not to take Shami out again.
For sure. Before we move on from this game, what would you say has ailed England in your view? I mean, I think not a single, well, except for Omer Kazi, who's been on the show a number of times, not a single pundit on TV did not have England in the semi-final lineup, right? Everybody said England would be in the semis minimum. What do you think has gone wrong for them? What's your take on it?
Today's match was, when the draw was put out a few months ago, this was like the match between the pre-tournament favorites.
For sure. Right? It was potential semi-final dress rehearsal or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel it's the batting. And my 2 cents is that I think their style of play, which they have, that whole baseball style of play that they've proudly revolutionized, they're really good at. Maybe it doesn't work in all conditions. And I think this World Cup has been that, while India normally you have, like, you know, it's largely flat track paced, and you know, you can go for those big scores and all that. We've seen clearly that this tournament is not like that, right? And maybe these guys, they were not able to unleash that style of play because of conditions, maybe some good bowling here and there. And then you kind of get frustrated. As long as they're scoring quickly, they're very comfortable, like those first 5 overs. After that, suddenly, when the bowling is on them and the ball is doing a little bit, and you can't just, and no width is on offer. All they had to do was grind it out, you know, for
so, you know, India has been, if I can say, if you use the word accused, India has been accused of, in ODIs, of batting the old way, where they kind of build a platform and try to go hard in the end. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe that's what works best in Indian conditions, right? And that's why India actually bats in that fashion. Which is not what
today's match was like that. Today's match was actually, in a way, in a funny way, I thought, like, when India was put into bat first, it's tricky, right? Because 5 matches in a row, you've got a nice template going, and suddenly this is new. Pitch was also 2 pace, so obviously it must have been confusing for them. I don't think anybody could say for sure what is a good total on this pitch, you know, and they're probably feeling their way around, figuring something out. Now, if they had not lost any wickets and they were going, I think then they would have, those decisions on around the 15th to 35th over would have been very important, like how fast to go, if I've just 2 down. But in the end, England were really on top, so they were just catching up. So that thing never really happened.
I think in terms of what ails England, I think the problem with England is, you know, in the T20 World Cup last year, they pretty much got the team together as if the A team is back, and you know, they had a bunch of guys who hadn't played together in a while, and they played for 3-4 months, and they went into the T20 World Cup and they did just fine. They won it, in fact. But they did the same thing this time around. Most of the guys who are playing haven't played a lot of ODIs together in the last few years, because England barely has played the first 11. The only difference being that in T20, all the guys are playing a lot of T20 cricket anyway, with the IPL and other franchise tournaments, right? So this is the format which none of the big guys in any country play list 50 over domestically, right? So they played about what? Maybe 10, 20 odd games in the last 4 years, and barely played with each other, which would have been a factor, right? Because there is a different pace, a different tempo to ODI compared to T20s, and obviously compared to tests. And that could also be a factor.
Yeah, that could be a factor. And actually, now that you say it, they're the only team which actually has very distinct teams for different formats of the game. All other teams have, you know, honestly, I think 9 out of 11 players are the same. It's just 2, 3 which keep changing, right? And maybe that also maybe upsets the rhythm somewhere. Yeah, it could be. Like Joe Root, you know, he's been this could have been his moment, right? In India, it's a great
I mean,
record here.
this is the
Out
kind of
of
day,
sorts,
low
totally.
score to chase, tricky conditions. If he's going to score 70 odd, England wins. That's how I was looking at it at the interval. But yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
I mean, and he's good. He's good against. He's good with his feet against spinners. He's done all that. He's done it in challenging test match situations. So I mean, yeah, it's just been hard.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so before we move on, I'm quickly going to pull up the fixtures for both teams. So we have India now plays Sri Lanka during the week. I think on Thursday. In Mumbai, they play South Africa and they play the Netherlands. They now have 6 wins, so they've pretty much qualified for all intents and purposes. I imagine if they win 2 of those games, which they should, they will probably lock their #1 slot. England, on the other hand, well, now I don't think they even have that outside chance as such, right? Because had they won the next 4 games and 17 if and buts happened, they had that outside chance. But I feel like that might also have gone now. So, but they still play Australia, Netherlands, and Pakistan.
Yeah.
So, okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying, I think England will have a hard time. I think Australia is looking like this completely amazing machine now. They're probably the team which has improved the most, right, from the first match till now. So yeah, in England.
And if you look at how they set up, I mentioned this about India, right? Every team, including South Africa, they go a bit somewhat sedately and they blow up in the last 10, 15 overs. Australia's 2 big wins against Pakistan and New Zealand have been the opposite, where they've kind of won the game in the first 15 overs with the bat, and then essentially they've just kind of held it together from there. So before we wrap up, there is another game tomorrow, of course. There's Afghanistan is taking on Sri Lanka. Both teams are very unlikely to qualify. They're sitting on 2 wins out of 5. What's your pick for that, Vivek? Who do you see being favored for that one?
Yeah, I think Afghanistan for pride would definitely the scalp home the victories, so they'll give it their all. Sri Lanka has been going through this perennial injury problem. I think they're also a very unstable team, unfortunately. So might be close. I mean, a contest between the 2 spinners. I don't know the conditions where it will work, but it's probably going to be 2 interesting spin attacks, right? So that's hopefully an interesting game. 2 good games, this whole tournament. So. That's all.
Okay, good stuff, Vivek. Thank you for being on.
Sure.
And we'd love to have you on once again. And for those of you who've been watching, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back tomorrow with a preview of the Pakistan-Bangladesh game day after. In the meantime, stay tuned to the shiny side.